All right, today I'm working on the 99 Z28. Only had it a few months, but I'm doing a lot of stuff to it. It's a fun little T-top, most of them are, with a stick shift trans. Today I'm going to be replacing the motor mounts. First time I've done this, not a whole lot of room. And so we'll be learning this together. I hear the driver's side is a more difficult one, but I'm going to crawl under there and point out what I do believe is involved. Ouch. Okay. Passenger side, you've got this thing bolted to the frame. Right there. 2 bolts, 2 more on that side. And then that, in turn, bolts the actual motor mount with the long bolt that goes all the way through it. See with the nut on the end? Okay. And the motor mount, I guess they call it the clamshell, is, of course, that unit right there. Looks like it's got 2 big bolts. Okay. One right there. And the other, you can see it's half covered by the clamshell, and there's actually 2 more on top. You can see a little bit of that bolt head on top. What I'm going to attempt to do is leave this main piece bolted to the frame, and I'm going to drive that nut out right there, pull the bolt out, and once the bolt's out, I'll be able to jack the motor up for some clearance. Those 2 bolts on the bottom should be fairly easy to get to. The 2 on the top will be a little more difficult. Air conditioning compressor. If we pull the air conditioning compressor off, we're going to have some access to get to those bolts. There's one of them right there. And there's another one way up there in the corner. So you don't have to pull the lines off the AC compressor. Just unbolt it, swing it out of our way. Okay, now we got the driver's side. And gonna undo the alternator. Looks like we got 1 bolt here and one bolt on the back side right there. And of course, undo the serpentine belt, and we'll swing that out of the way. This has a heat shield right there. You can see this heat shield. Anyway, it's there it is, bolted with 2 little nuts, and the nut goes right on top of the actual motor mount nut right there. So we're going to have to pull that nut off, and there's one on the other side. There's the long bolt that goes through the clamshell. Okay, here's a much better view. So I'm going to pull that nut off. Of course, the 2 nuts there on the bottom. Okay, another update. This is proving to be more annoying than I had previously thought. Starting off with the passenger side motor mount, because I believe that's the one that's torn. I removed that uppermost radiator hose, the small one right there, because in order to get the air conditioning compressor off, there's 2 bolts on top, 2 bolts on bottom. The ones on bottom are a 15-inch socket. Remove those last. Get the 2 on top. The only way I was able to get the 2 on top was through the top with a 15-inch wrench, box wrench, and it sucked. So that's off. People say, "Oh yeah, just swing it over the sway bar." Well, I got a bigger front sway bar, so maybe that's my problem. But I had to remove the sway bar, or at least the main bolts, those 2, and those 2 up there, and I didn't remove the end links, but let it drop. And as soon as I let it drop, that gave me much better access to get in there and see the motor mount. So now I can begin the actual fun part, right? Hopefully when I post back, it'll be an update on motor mount on my workbench. So we'll see. Okay, another update. I actually removed the air conditioning bracket off the engine, 3 15-inch bolts. Comes off really easy. It went right there. What that allowed me to do was actually get clear access up to that bolt, which is a size 19 head and nut. That's the actual main mount bolt that goes all the way through. I then took 2x4 and a jack under the oil pan, jacked it up just enough, and to relieve the pressure on this bolt. Okay, that comes out. Now at this point, I hear you can jack the engine up even more, so let's see what happens. Probably enough. I think I can get to those front back bolts now. Alright, another quick update on this. I've almost got it out. I jacked up the pan, got the engine up. Up top, I just unbolted the air cleaner throttle body assembly. Not the actual throttle body, but just the air tube up there to give it room. Now, I got significantly more room once I jacked up the engine. Now, the very bottom, not on this side, but the opposite side, you can kind of see from there. I was able to get to that back bolt with just a simple swivel and an extension and a socket. So that got me to the bottom bolt, but that upper back bolt right up there, basically I just have a short ratchet and just a regular extension, and I reach around from the front all the way back and get it. So, and then this is my last bolt, and after I get this one out, the motor mount should be ready to come out. In fact, here it is right here. Got the bolt. Okay. So I don't know how this is going to come out. I'm going to play with this. I'll probably have to do it off camera. The inner piece seems really loose. I don't know how it's supposed to be though. You can, that's the inner piece right there that was moving on me. I hope I don't have to remove this. I might have to see if I can get some more air up on that engine. Alright, it's out. I'm just able to wiggle it out. Now, I don't know how this is supposed to be. My engine was flopping around, mostly in reverse, but that's a lot of excess room right here for this thing to move around. So it looks like, kind of hard to see, looks like it's supposed to be bonded to the metal somehow. So, but I can't imagine that that's doing me any good flopping around like that every time I nail it. So, according to the instructions, what I'm supposed to do here is drill out these two rivets. Nothing's ever plug and play, is it? So, as soon as I drill out those two rivets, the insert looks like this, but it's polyurethane, goes in. I'll get back to you. I've successfully drilled out my rivets, separated what's called clamshell. Wanted to note that the old one is definitely, I started to clean up the rubber with a wire wheel, but the old one is definitely supposed to be bonded to the metal. And so mine was definitely loose, flopping around. The new one is substantially bigger, so make sure you follow the instructions. I'm just, loosely throwing it in there. It's going to go like that. It'll get bolted back down and installed. And there's a specific orientation on the instructions, so make sure you follow that. So I'm going to go ahead and pause on this side and actually start on the driver's side before I get this installed, because I hear the driver's side is the hard one. So, and then I'll install both after the other one's out. Next process, on the driver's side, I'm going to pull the steering shaft out and got that one bolt right there. And then there's one more bolt, from what I understand, up the steering shaft. I think we can just barely see it from here. You're going to pull both of those out. I'm not sure if that other one has to be gotten from the top or not yet. When you're done pulling the shaft out, then you got to pull on this side the actual support bracket coming off the frame, and the mounting bolts for that are going to be, you can kind of see one, there you go, it's going to be under the steering shaft. So this is going to be fun. There's another one, and there's a couple back, so that big arm comes off. Make sure the engine's supported, loosen the bolts off, pull that big one up top, and Then that heat shield's got to come off. Okay, there's a couple nuts. Pull the heat shield off. Then you can finally unbolt it from the engine. What a lot of fun, eh? Okay, tip number 6,000. This is more suck than I've experienced in quite some time. Do yourself a favor. Unbolt that pedestal right here. I unbolted this one. See, I spent an hour trying to get this goddamn engine mount on. With that pedestal still bolted, just not going to happen. It took me all of 5 minutes to unbolt the thing, and then I got all 4 bolts in. So I dropped the starter too, because this stupid cable is just completely in the way. This is turning out to not be fun, but looks like I'm pretty much on my home stretch here on the passenger side. Back at it again. I believe I showed this to you, but here's the finished passenger side mount. Okay, there's a tab, and I remember when I took it off, those 2 dots were facing up. So when you install it on the passenger side, it's going to be like this, with the tab towards the front. Pulling the alternator, there were 3 bolts, 1 bolt, another bolt, and there was one, right here, a 3rd bolt you got from the back. Don't drop it too far, because you're going to pull that little skinny wire apart right here. So drop it just a little bit so you can pull that out before you yank it out. And there's another wire on the back. Make sure you disconnect the battery before you start all this, so you don't arc anything, ground any wires out that have power going to them. Back to the driver's side. Down there. There it is. That hole right there, there was a bolt. It's a 11 millimeter for the steering shaft. Remove that. We're onto the driver's side again, by the way. Okay. Then I've got the shaft tucked up, way up there, but the steering shaft was connected right down here with another 11 millimeter. And then just take the steering shaft, push it up out of the way. Okay, now we're removing the pedestal. Okay, which is the fun part, right? And we're going to go ahead and remove the O2 sensor. Okay, there's that O2 sensor. Probably takes a 7/8, I'm guessing, because that's blocking the top bolt to the pedestal. So as soon as that pedestal is off, then we can remove the heat shield up there and unbolt the motor mount. Okay, driver's side, here's the heat shield. Okay, got it off. 11 millimeter nut on the end of it. And the other one is a 13 bolt like the rest of them. Got the pedestal off too. Okay. So found that most of this is a learning curve. It's actually pretty easy once you know what you're doing. Once you got one side down. Taking the pedestals off for the key really helps immensely. Don't try to work around them. The pedestals are really easy to get off. Those are 15-inch bolts, and they're actually not that tight. So this one's coming out. I think this one's toasty too. Let's see here. Yep, this one's toasty. This is supposed to be bonded to the shell. Cheap GM rubber bullshit. So they were both crapped and had a lot of movement going on the engine when I was accelerating. It'd be nice to get these taken care of. My final update. It's 90% done. Well, everything's in. Okay, there it is. New mount, driver's side. Pedestal is loosely bolted back on. I just have to tighten it. Motor mount and the shield are back on. So there's definitely a learning curve to this. The driver's side was easier, even though it's the more difficult side, simply because I'd already done the passenger side. And once you've done one, you get it down pat. You remove that pedestal, and really everything is cake. And getting those pedestals off are easy, as soon as you get the stuff out of the way. make sure you use a wobble. So that's how, you know, I got to a bunch of those bolts. So anyhow, have fun doing yours. All right, my motor mount project is done. I've got the accessories off because I'm doing an oil pump swap next. So stay tuned. I may do a video write-up on that also. We'll see. This is just kind of a summary of what to do up top and on the bottom. Disconnect your battery, disconnect your air filter box as well as the meter. Now up here you want to actually disconnect the wiring coming off your throttle body and your mass air meter, and up here there's 3 plugs. Now that will allow the alternator harness to come down so you don't snap that little wire. And like I said before, you're going to go ahead and pull that top bolt out, okay? And that pretty much accounts for what you're going to do up top here. Now, what I had to do, what you may or may not have to do, is I had to pull that hose off of the radiator. That small hose back there, I pulled it off to gain access to the top air conditioning bolt. I lost my patience and I had to drain the radiator anyway. You can screw with it long enough, you can probably get the air conditioning off without pulling that. So once you pull the alternator off, okay, remember there's 2 plugs on that. One is a skinny little one that breaks. That's this, and I believe this one's been extended by the previous owner. So yours is probably going to be as short as that little black wire. So it's going to want to tear before you do anything, so be careful. All right, and there's one bigger harness. That one right there, which is connected by a nut. All the sockets for this job are going to be a 15, 13, 18, 11. I don't think you need a 10, but grab one anyway and grab a 14. Of course, grab matching wrenches and a swivel socket. That should pretty much do it for tools. A block of wood, a jack. Okay, then like I said before, you've got your 4 bolts. Drop your compressor. You may or may not have to drop the sway bar in order to get this thing out of the way. I dropped the sway bar. Okay, now here is the finished product. Got the bolts in both sides with the energy suspension mounts. Everything's in, everything's secured. Came out real nice. Here's a good view of the driver's side. So I'm pretty happy with the way things turned out. Of course, I got to go drive it, but I can already tell by how stiff the mounts are. This is going to be a drastic upgrade. Now, to get those bolts in weren't too much of a challenge. Make sure you orientate these plates right. You know, if you follow the directions and you put the mounts back on right, on the passenger side, the little tab, I don't know if you can see it flush up against the block right next to that center bolt there. The tab goes towards the rear end on the driver's side, and on the passenger side, that middle tab goes towards the front. Okay? So to go opposite directions. So that's the correct orientation. You can also tell by the uneven bolts on both sides. The uneven bolts face down. Okay, you can see how there's 3 bolt holes. The middle one's lower on both sides. That's going to be facing down because the top 3 holes are all in a line. In order to get that top center bolt in, the one that connects the mount to the perch pedestal there, I used a tire iron as a wiggle device, and I just wiggled the motor a little bit to the left or to the right, and it jacked the engine up accordingly, and the holes pretty much lined right up, and I tapped them in with a hammer. It wasn't too bad. It took me about 15 minutes to get both bolts in. So, enjoy, guys. Stay tuned, subscribe. I'll make more fun little amateur videos later.